Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. My name is Mark Anthony Peter, and welcome to Breakthrough. After very long, Sean Michael Small is here with me on set after a while. All the mosquito bites.
It's been long. The mosquito bites were getting terrible. I mean, the last time, you notice I was sheltering in place away from the mosquitoes, and I could empathize with those throughout the country that's having to deal with a similar thing. But it is what it is. Yeah. Usually people are like, they wish they were where I was. No, I would only wish those mosquitoes on my worst enemy. I'll reserve it for that.
No, I mean, I did see a little funny. I did see a post on Facebook saying like the flies and the mosquitoes, they're working in shifts. Because when the flies are out, the mosquitoes are not, and when the mosquitoes are out, the flies are out. And it's very irritating.
Now, sometimes it felt as though they were both pulling double shifts where I was. And there were flies that I couldn't, why are there flies here? There's nothing here. Why are there flies? I don't understand. And then the mosquitoes, particularly in some parts of the island in Tobago, like the Bonaccord area at 6 o'clock. Yeah, that's a different level of.
Okay, no problem. So I guess that's enough.
That's enough
bug talk.
My PTSD. Sean Michael Small here, folks. Yes.
That's enough insect talk. So let's get into some arts and culture talk now.
Yes, please. Something to take my mind off of all the bites.
And joining us in studio is musician and music educator, Mr. Shurvone Brathwaite. Good morning, Shurvone.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm awake.
Very good. Thank you. That's your cup of coffee. Just kind of keeping you.
I take it you're one of the artists who's a night person.
No, I just like to be in bed.
Well, you're a
yeah.
You're a no time.
Any opportunity to sleep, I take.
I see. So now that we have you here, I want to ask you to just talk about yourself a little bit, and then we're going to get into the topic of discussion. And ironically, the topic of discussion is really how do you build a career, and whether or not you're chasing a career or building your own career. So first of all, chat with us about just briefly, how you've built your career and what are some of the things that you're involved in?
Okay, I guess I started building my career unknowingly to me through volunteerism. Okay. So I started volunteer teaching through the music group that I belong to in Tobago. And from that, my music teacher at the time identified, hey, you have a skill, you have a passion, you could do this thing. So straight out of sixth form, I applied and became an assistant teacher under the Tobago House of Assembly. I did that for a year, then I moved to Trinidad to pursue my BFA at UTT. Once again, while at UTT through volunteerism, I started working with the Consortium of Disability Organizations, so my passion for teaching further developed. So it wasn't just general ed, but started doing special ed music as well. The performer side of me started developing around sixth form, so I started straddling being a performer and educator coming along. By the end of my degree, I became principal clarinet of the National Philharmonic, started teaching, became the performing arts lead teacher at Moulton Hall Methodist Primary School, and it's just been a journey of self-discovery in education as well as a performer. On the performer side, becoming more in orchestral and chamber music, and as an educator, somewhat still trying to identify exactly what is my true passion, because I have interests, but I'm still working through where I belong, in a sense.
Like what part of education?
What part of education? So therefore, I love doing general ed, I love doing special ed music. It's just that I've found myself liking several aspects. Okay. So I'm trying to figure out, well, is it that I'm good at several things, or I'm good at this thing but can't do other things. So it's still a work in progress.
Well, one thing, it's interesting because you said that volunteerism, I guess, opened doors for you.
Yeah.
Now, ironically, a taboo statement for artists, understandably so, is I'll pay you an exposure. But to some extent, there is some truth, some practical benefit to that when done in good faith, I guess you could say. And would you say that to some extent, it's not as though you took 10 years of exposure to get where you are, but it did help.
It did help. As you said, volunteerism done in good faith. Volunteerism at the core by its definition. So some persons use volunteerism for their own personal gain and for their own selfish gain. So therefore, and I've experienced that persons say you must volunteer because it's going to help your career. And I'm like, how? At this stage in my life, how is that going to help me, right? If you want me to volunteer, just ask me to volunteer my time, right? I prefer you to be upfront with me than you kind of trying to mama guy me, right? But even now at 33, starting off teaching at 19, I see the importance of volunteerism. I see the importance of working with organizations, giving back, and also while they're looking for opportunities to learn skills that I necessarily wouldn't get the opportunity to learn in the workplace. Also, as one of my lecturers said in UTT, volunteerism allows you the opportunity to make mistakes that you cannot make in the workplace. Because you're going to get fired.
That's okay.
So therefore, because you're working within a volunteer setting, you are being supervised. So therefore, you get to test, you get to try. And if you make a mistake, there's someone there to help you to fix the situation, rather than in the workplace. If you make that situation, it really sometimes just come down to being fired.
I see. Okay. And that's interesting because you mentioned that some people kind of mama guy you in terms of like, this is going to be great for your career. And I have personally seen those artists, those musicians specifically, who, they try to fill their resume with like titles and, affiliations and all sorts of things. And then when they don't get the break that they're looking for, then they're upset. And then they lash out, right? As opposed to those who are genuinely about the craft, genuinely about the art, and they are okay. So it's like, because there was an Instagram post that I saw that kind of brought up this topic, and the post basically had two examples. Chasing a career is, I'm going to have the best students to lift my profile, as opposed to building a career, I'm going to turn probably mediocre students into the best students that they can be, and then they can be the best performers. So obviously right away we see that difference of one is about me and the other is about the students. So in terms of that difference between building and chasing a career, how would you kind of define that, and what are some of the ways that you've seen or that you think actually work for people?
Well, to answer that question, you have to look at the definition of building compared to chasing. In order for you to chase something, you have to run it down. And most time, if you're chasing something, it's going away from you. So therefore, if you're chasing a career, you find yourself in a situation running down something that you think you want, but for some strange reason, it seems further and further away. While if you're building, it's very strategic. In order for you to build a house, you must have a foundation. And also, building a career requires long-term planning. So for example, if you want to be, because US politics is hot right now, you want to be the President of the United States of America. That is your building towards that. Well, okay, in education we call it learning by design, right? So therefore you have to work backwards. In order for me to be the President of the United States, I probably should be a lawyer. Right?
Yeah.
So therefore, because of that, you have to work backwards. So therefore, you know what steps you need to take to get to that place. So therefore, you build a career. While if you're chasing being the President of the United States and you don't necessarily know how to get there, then you're volunteering here, you volunteer there, and you have this beautiful resume packed, but doesn't necessarily make sense towards what you're aiming towards. So therefore, it's a difference in approach. Now, I would say that early in my career, I chased. Because I wanted to do this, I wanted to do that, in figuring out. But then at some point, one of my mentors said, well, what do you really want to do? And that's when you had to sit back and do some introspection. Well, I want to do this. And then the question is asked, well, why am I doing this? This doesn't necessarily make sense. Now, depending on where you are in your life, you may need to do this particular thing to pay bills. And I understand that, but understand that while you're doing this, you need to prepare yourself to move to the next place as you build, because building a career is a step-by-step process. It's a long-term goal. You need to know where you're going. You also need to understand if you're building a career, are you building a career based on your own natural abilities? Because if you're building a career on something you think you could do and you really can't, we have some problems as well. You know, so building requires some work. Chasing requires energy.
I think, yes. Because usually that's the phrase, chasing your dreams. You chase your dreams. Actors, generally, they chase their dreams. And I think this is somewhat patent. I don't know if it's exactly the same principle or logic. Glenn Powell was interviewed about how he got to do Top Gun Maverick, because he auditioned for the second male lead, right? the son of Maverick's partner from the first movie. And he didn't get the role. So he didn't want to be in the movie because he didn't want to take a lesser part. So Tom Cruise calls him up and says, well, you know, we really want you to do the movie. And Glenn Powell explained, well, I don't really want to do a lesser role. And Tom Cruise basically asked him, well, what do you want, right? What do you want from your career? And Glenn Powell said it straight. I want to be you. I want to be like you. I want to have memorable roles like you. And Tom Cruise was like, well, no, I did great movies and I made the roles great. I made the roles memorable. I didn't take memorable roles. I didn't wait to get the right role to make me big, right? I chased after movies I knew were going to be great, and then I made something of what I could get out of it so that, you know, I didn't, and I guess you could argue that's not chasing. I'm waiting for the right role and I get the right break. But rather, well, yes, in some ways it's a break to get into the big movie, but to some extent, it's a proactivity of, like when some actors are like, I'll do whatever Denis Villeneuve wants to do. Whatever he wants me to do, I'll do it. I don't even need to read the script. Because they're like, it's a great director, they trust him, and they know this is gonna be something I wanna be a part of it. And Glenn Powell is like, after Top Gun Maverick, his career, next level.
As I said, I agree with everything. So building requires you to have some faith as well. The break is going to come if you do the right thing, if you have mentors. So you must have faith in the work that you are doing, right? Also understanding that the journey is not necessarily going to go the way you expect it to go. This is your journey, right? My contemporary's journey, that's their journey, it's not mine. So therefore, I have to sit and wait for my turn, my break. So therefore, you have faith, you understand that the journey is not going to go necessarily the way you want it to go, and also be of value in the space that you're in. One of the greatest lessons I was taught was, whatever task you are given, do it well.
Yes.
Just do it well.
Yeah.
And over that time, people be like, you become dependable. So people have started to say, oh, we could call on him. We could call on him. And over time, you start to show more of your skills. You start to develop more skills. And then you sometimes realize, even though I didn't take necessarily the role or the position or the job I wanted, it gave me the skills I need for the position I actually am aiming for, because I didn't realize that I wasn't prepared.
Okay. So, well, in some case, and I think Sean and I would have had this discussion too, we would have spoken about building the resilience muscle. And I think in order to do that, there needs to be a certain level of character that you carry yourself with. How important, because if you, as you spoke about doing tasks and doing it well, and coming back to that example, it's how much of yourself do you bring to that specific task? How much of yourself do you authentically bring to that specific role? Is there a level of integrity? Is there a level of honesty? Because once you are able to do it well, then that builds trust. And then the people will most likely call you back. Or other people who worked on it will notice that, you'll stand out and be like, okay, he has a certain level of character, as opposed to just having the qualifications, be it the academic qualifications.
Checking the boxes.
Checking the boxes,
right.
But then your character is absolute trash. Then that's going to be a problem.
I would expect. I would expect if you're aiming to do well, you will bring your best self to the table.
Not everybody does.
Right? I would expect. I would expect you bring your.
Because some people out here thinking that the qualifications makes the man or the woman, and then they
Not just the qualifications, the resume.
The resume.
You know, I am a big star in whatever field, therefore I know best, or I am best, or how could you contradict me, or whatever.
Listen, and that's great if that's what you're looking for. But in my experience, I could say that you must bring your best self. For example, I remember Islan Thomas, I'm so sorry. When I went for the interview to be the music teacher and eventually performing as lead at Moulton Hall Methodist Primary, she did not care to look at my resume. She actually pitched it to the side. It was well done. I put so much work into it. I was proud of it. And it's in that moment I realized it was
all nicely layered. Oh, yes.
Right?
Did you go like, I think it was Elle Woods and Legally Blonde and colored paper?
It wasn't my favorite color. But in that moment, when she threw my resume to the side, after I got on my feels, and I started to hear the question, I paid attention to the question she was asking me. She didn't need to read that if I answered those questions properly. Because what she wanted to know was, can you do the job? Point blank. You wouldn't be here without a bachelor's. You wouldn't be here without so by so by so. So therefore, the mere fact that you're in front of me means that you already did that already. You have checked off those boxes. Can you do the job? And therefore, in that interview, she questioned my character. She gave me scenarios. How would I deal with that? And then point blank, she asked me, how hard can you work? Can you fit into an environment where teachers are expected to go the extra mile? I answered, I got the job, so I think I answered the questions
correctly, right?
But in that moment, I learned very early on, if you're in a room where everyone has a bachelor's degree, come on.
Yeah.
If you're in a room where everyone has a master's degree, okay. If you're in a room where everyone has a PhD, that is yes, that's great. You have that, you have entered this space. Now let's talk about your work, what you have done, what you can do, and what you can bring to the table.
And I think that's one of the misconceptions that people are now sort of realizing, us who grew up in the get your education, get your degree, get your master's as high as you can, and you'll make it. And now we're at the place where it just gets you in the door. You kind of have to carry yourself a little bit further in terms of what you do and how you carry about yourself.
There's a strange example, so you might not necessarily see how it fits, but a Navy SEAL was talking to management people about criteria for selecting a SEAL, right? And the idea was, look, you could make a graph. On one, it's about what kind of teamwork they do, and one is their performance. And basically he said, look, they would prefer, yes, you want the high performance, high teamwork guy. That's like, he has it all. But they would say, we will pick the mid performance or even low performance, high teamwork guy for a high stress job that requires excellent execution over the high performance, low teamwork guy. Because they can't afford for the team to be pulled down by a bad attitude, right? And he was then talking to management people. And I think any sort of project should consider that, because to what extent is the measurable skills always going to translate? And more importantly, what good is it to the organization, to the performance, to the production? No matter how good you are, if you're too difficult to work with, right, then the project falls apart. That's why big bands break apart. It's not about skill at that point, because they already had hits. So you would think that they were skilled enough to continue touring together. It's the egos and can't get out of each other's way.
But also the flip side of that is that you as a professional need to know yourself as well. For example, I have gotten to the point where I say humbly, I really can't work there. And it's not because I don't think I have the skills. Sometimes it's that I don't necessarily have the skills as yet, but sometimes I have to accept that I am not the right person. And because I'm conscious of the type of career trajectory I'm working on, I have to say, listen, not right now. If I can see in the future I can work in this space, or sometime I just have to say, no, I can't. I am not the best person, and I am not ashamed to recommend someone who I think is better than I am.
That's interesting, because there was a question that I wanted to ask. So at what point do you, because you said early in your career, I think for us all, when you're young and you're eager, you're doing as much as you can with the hope and intention to learn as much as you can. But at some point, you stop chasing certain opportunities and start curating the certain things that you get involved in. So I would say when you're young, especially if you're, as you said, the volunteer programs, those are safe environments that you could sort of make the mistakes that you can. I also see I also see pursuing your bachelor's as some of that. If you're pursuing music, I would tell students, join once you balance it all and your grades are good, join as many ensembles as you can. Be involved because you don't know what you like as yet. But then once you go through that journey and you step into the working world, there are some things that at what point do you stop chasing and start curating certain things that you want to get involved in?
Constantly seeking the advice of your mentors. So therefore, it's important to talk to persons who are where you would like to be. right? To find out. So because they have years ahead of you. So they will be like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. I know you want to, but don't do that. On top of that, you have to always keep reflecting. Okay, I did this. Did I enjoy this as much as I thought I would have? I didn't. Okay, so maybe I should. This is not for me. And one of the best good piece of advice I got from a lecturer, a dance lecturer in UTT actually, she said, learn and know what you do not like. When you know what you do not like, it saves you a lot of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you know you don't like working in such a space, then ensure that you never have to work in such a space. And that starts weeding out certain things just naturally because you know what you're not prepared to work with, what you do not enjoy. So therefore you start, as I said, curating a journey by saying, okay, I don't like this, so therefore let me do whatever it takes to not end up there.
But also, to go back to a couple of things you said, one is to be dependable, but then there's also the whole thing about knowing what's not for you, what you're not suitable for, and sometimes what you don't like is what you're not suitable for. Because how are you going to give 110% if you're like, I'm just here for the check? Like, that's not good motivation, right? I don't like this role, I'm just here for the check. Some actors or performers, they're so technically proficient and professional, and their method allows them to do that, but some artists, they're based on their emotions and they just can't. But one of the things that led me to, and we've had this discussion before, is then people could get discouraged. One of the things they get discouraged is when they feel, oh, well, it's a friend thing, it's a favoritism thing, it's a nepotism thing. But you went back, this is why I also included the be dependable parts. It's about networking. Art is subjective, and if you're looking for high teamwork people, you're not gonna get that on a resume. A bachelor's in music or a master's in performance or composition or whatever is not gonna tell me. I mean, in theory, you have a baseline because you would have had group projects in school, but that's not gonna tell me what kind of professional you are. That's not gonna tell me how you're gonna fit into my ensemble. And I think back to the building versus chasing. Building to me is being realistic, being proactive and constructive with your choices, right? And constructive also means being constructive with how you interact with other people, as opposed to being demanding and being cutthroat. I have to get this. I have to be better than them. They always, I can't let this person get this part over me because I can't let them outshine me. I can't let their career, because we're being compared and I need to have more shine than them. And at some point, I think that will wear people down the wrong way. Some of the best movies, especially recently, right? I mean, it's not necessarily big Oscar pieces, but like Dune Part 2, when you hear the cast speak about each other, right? And the collaborative approach that the director took, and how the glowing praise of the whole experience, despite the fact that they were filming in the desert, right? It just goes to show you that any sort of project kind of needs that. Would you?
I agree. Your ability to work in a team, especially as a creative, is quite important. I mainly do, as I said, orchestral and chamber work. I must work with people, right?
But like, I wanted to focus on the fact that some people need to understand it's not about favoritism. They have network better than you. They are known to be good teammates, and to some extent, the director, the producers, they're gonna bet on people who have a proven record of having these traits.
Yeah, what you should aim to be. What I aim to be is when someone say, hey, I'm looking for someone to do so by so, my name should be the first to come to mind. If you aim to be that person, the person that people think of first, hey, I need someone, so let me call. Are you available? That will get you a lot further than false networking, where you're kind of pushing yourself in person's faces. Now, there are times you need to put yourself out there and advertise, let people know what you're doing. But you should aim to get to a point where, for any project, when people are looking to fill positions, you must come to mind. And you must come to mind because people know you do this great or these things really, really well. So it's a double-edged sword. And also, what I have noticed, when you work in good environments, iron sharpens iron. So therefore, what happens over time is that they pull things out of you, and then people are like, oh, I didn't know. next time, you know what, instead of doing this, I'm going to give him a little more responsibility. Because you had an interview where Dr. Leah Brown was here, and she talked about sometimes the person who you may think you're looking for a particular leader, and you may think these are the qualities when the leader actually has very different qualities, but you notice because iron sharpens iron, it brought him out. So therefore, at that time, someone's going to say, let me give Mark a little more responsibility. I think he can.
That's another thing, because it seems as though there are some people who, I want to be the big dog. I don't want to have to compete with other skilled people. I want to be in a project where I'm the big fish. And then they have those who are like, no. I want to work with the best. I want to learn. I am supposedly a big name. People call me a big name. But I want to go and work under the bigger name.
Well...
And you will get those stories again where I'm like, I was in awe. I learned this from him. Or I learned that from him. Whether it's music, whether it's acting, whatever artistic project. Like, the benefits of being able not just to be sharpened by the counterpart in front of you, pushing you to do better with their work ethic and their execution, but also just the lessons that could be learned from the example.
Yeah. And once again, it's where you are. It's literally where you are. If you think you're at the point where you say you can make the demands, I'm only taking these projects, then if you have built a solid career to lead you to that point, I can't give you wrong. But also understand that if you take that position, it's a double-edged sword, because if you say, I am not working with so-and-so because I feel I am so-and-so, know that the stream of income is going to slow down because you are blocking yourself from working on certain projects. And if you're at a point where you don't have a big flow to carry you for an extended period, if you're going to take certain positions, be prepared to take the negative side of it. No, you can't be at the point where I can't make these decisions as yet. But you learn to work in a space quietly, effectively, and not let the environment affect you too much. So you can just...
One of the things, that's a really good point, and sort of to answer Sean's question, one of the things that I've learned is the best teachers that I've seen are the greatest students. The best leaders are the best followers or the best servants. So they know how they are constantly learning what it's like to be, quote unquote, on the ground, so then they can help meet the needs of the ground and let the ground continue to push forward as one unit. So if it's a case where you think leadership is telling people what to do and then you taking the credit for it, that's absolutely not the reality of it, right? And another point that I'd like to make, I remember being in a space that I was in for a while and started losing myself because it no longer brought out, my best self. So sometimes there are decisions that you have to make as creatives to kind of walk away. Yes.
Right. I wanted to ask about that. Ask about that. Because you said it was a double-edged sword, but what if, big star with big ego, and in some cases you might have even had a direct negative interaction. Rebecca Ferguson, I think, went on the record to say that she had a situation, she didn't say with who, right, that the implication is, she doesn't want to work with this actor, right? A musician might not want to work with this producer, or fellow musician might not want to have this feature, even though it's available. And right, you might be closing some doors, but what happens now if, for my peace, for my artistic integrity, because I can't stand this person and this is not going to go well, or even worse, you fool the producers, you fool the director, but I'm not going to go in the desert when you're going to make things unpleasant to the environment. I'm going to stay, right?
Yeah, so it's basically like you don't go in the desert unless you know.
Right. So is there times when yes, you should stay clear?
Yeah, I have had to do that, where even sometimes you're in the project and you're like, I should have never done this, but because of my integrity, I choose just to get to the end. And then after I say politely, I'm not going to do this again.
Okay.
Integrity, you stick through it.
I stick through because I have made a contractual agreement, so therefore I have to go all the way through. Mm-hmm. So therefore, because once again, I am thinking I'm building a career. Even though I'm walking away, how do I walk away?
Yes.
That's important.
Yeah.
Now, if I decide to cuss with everybody and then that's a whole different situation that's going to affect me later on. If I say, listen, I've signed on, I need to get to the end of this project, I am not happy, but I have to get to the end. Let me fulfill my contractual agreement, and I know within myself, when next they call, I am unavailable. Mm. Even if I don't have a job, I am unavailable, because I can't put myself through that because it's just unhealthy. And that's tough, but you have to sometimes just make those harsh decisions.
Yeah. So we've spoken about that journey. Now, once you're at a place where you can pass on the knowledge to the younger ones coming up, what are some of the things that you think people should have? First of all, I think it goes without saying that we do need to continuously pass on the knowledge. People have sewn into us as the generations coming up, and there's no other choice but to pay it forward. Some people are able to do it really well. Some people kind of have to learn to do it, and some people just don't like to do it. If you don't like to do it, then don't do it, because you're not going to do anybody good. Right. There's some teachers who are like, they don't like children. So like, why are you teaching? Like, why? You know? So what are some of these steps that you think people we know sometimes it's a reality. Yeah. What are some of these steps that you think people should take, or how should we, continuously pass on the knowledge and the gifts and all of those things?
Just be of service. Just be of service to your fellow man. It might sound all airy-fairy, but just be of service. Try to be pleasant to everyone you're interacting with. Try to bring your best self to the space. Try to be professional. If someone comes to you for help and you can offer them help, offer the help. Sometimes you're offering help by just being professional and getting the job done because you're helping them while they're observing you. They're like, you know what, that's how I want to operate. This is the type of professional I want to be. And sometimes it's direct service where they come to you and you have to say, okay, let me help you with this. This is how you do this. No, if you do that, that's not going to work out well. A conversation. If you just be of service to your fellow man, you have no other choice but to pass on knowledge, because you're giving yourself. You're helping to make this person, whether they're ahead of you on the journey or behind you or with you, you are offering parts of yourself and knowledge that they may not necessarily have. And that is going to make them a better person. Just be of service. That's my recommendation.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have, Mark.
That is all it These are some of the things that we go through. Yes, the conversation goes so well, and then it's like, oh, we need to.
Warm.
We need to.
I feel like I was getting bright all of us.
we do need to wrap up. Shurvone, thank you so much for joining us this morning.